Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Premier League check-in podcast with myself, Benjamin Bloom, and Matt SB. We're laughing because you've just missed the best outtake in the entire history of podcasting, and only me and Matt are ever going to know about it, and we're never going to speak of it ever again. How are you, Matt? Better than me after my amazing false start there.
I'm good, thank you, Ben. Looking forward to talking some more Premier League. There's some really interesting results, and can't wait to get into it.
Let's do this. This week in the top division, it was West Ham 0, Chelsea 3, Villa 3, Wolves 1, Fulham 3, Newcastle 1. Down at the bottom, unhelpful draws were predicted, and unhelpful draws we got. Leicester 1, Everton 1. It was Liverpool 3, Bournemouth 0, Southampton 1, Ipswich 1, Spurs 3, Brentford 1, Palace 0, Man United 0. Does that count as an unhelpful draw down at the bottom of the Premier League for Man United? Brighton 2, Forest 2, and Manchester City 2, Arsenal 2. And I have to say the blockbuster fixture at the top did not disappoint. And something that never disappoints is Matt's moment. Who and what have you picked out for us to talk about this week, Matt?
Now, we love talking about the Premier League relegation battle, even this early on into the season. And I think it's time we spoke about Wolves, who are now propping up the table, bottom of the league after losing 3-1 to Aston Villa. And I think it is a real cause for concern here. It's early days. You know, we've only played 5 games, and on paper, I do think Wolves have had 5 difficult fixtures, but it's the manner of some of these defeats that are giving me some cause for concern here. And you look at the next few fixtures as well, which we will come on to. I think there's a real case that Wolves are bottom, and I don't see them moving anywhere anytime just yet either. So my first concern is looking at the business over the last couple of seasons. They've lost Neto, Kilman, Podence, Traore, Neves, Cody, Jimenez, Moutinho. There is a lot of those players that were kind of core to this.
Is that all just to settle P&S, Matt, and FFP?
Yes, do you know what? That's a very good point. It could be, and that could also be why they've maybe not brought in such strong reinforcements as well. That's a very good point, because I think everyone's a bit scared of being hit with the FFP after what we've seen with Nottingham Forest and Everton. But maybe as a result of that now, Wolves are sliding into trouble on the pitch and in the table. So yeah, down to bottom. Against Villa, it was a 3-1 defeat. And mirroring the game against Newcastle the week before, they've taken the lead. And especially in a local derby, I know they're away and Villa have been great, but you thought there would be some more fire in their belly to get something over the line, and to lose 3-1 as well. Real cause for concern here, because I think they look fragile. They're conceding lots of goals, the joint most goals conceded, along with Everton. And then, as I say, with the fixtures coming up now, Liverpool at home, Brentford away, Man City at home, Brighton away. So they're bottom. And, you know, unless they pull out a really strong result out of nowhere, they're going to stay bottom for a few more weeks, in my opinion. We'll talk about the relegation battle in broader terms later when we speak about some of the draws that went on. Maybe right now the Wolves fans might be relieved that everyone else is tripping over their own feet. But yeah, for Wolves to be involved, considering where they have been over the last few years, it's a real cause for concern. And there is pressure on O'Neill now, because despite what I said about them losing all of these key players, you still look at the quality they have got with Cunha, Lamina, the experience of Dawson at the back. They shouldn't be losing the way they are. And yeah, I think there is pressure on O'Neill, and he does need to do something pretty soon.
What do you make of him then? Because I always remember the Bournemouth season where Scott Parker started the season, and I think they lose like 9 at Liverpool or something ridiculous. And then he kind of talked himself into getting a sack with a bit of a silly interview. And then I think everybody was like, right, okay, well, that's Bournemouth relegated now, isn't it? They've had a terrible start. They're about to change manager, and in comes Gary O'Neill and does brilliantly. And then they pivot as well. Everyone thinks he was a bit unlucky, you know, in terms of he deserved to keep that job. But he then does get another job at a great club like Wolves. But Matt, you know full well that the change that they're going to make is going to be in the dugout if they're still bottom. You make a very, very fair point that, you know, it wouldn't really be fair after 5 games they're bottom, and you've just pointed out they now play Liverpool and Man City in the next 3 games, and then Brighton. So you've almost got to then say, well, if you're not going to do anything now, you can't do anything then, because it's. But then that will be 8-9 games potentially, won't it? But you wonder if owners, they think, well, what can we really do here? We struggling with FFP, can't change the playing squad, can change the manager mid-season, and they always go for it, don't they, before the window. So I think that would be a bad thing to do, but I can see them doing it. Where are you sort of sitting on the manager here?
Well, that's it. I mean, the Premier League is the most unforgiving league. It could be a couple of games and you're gone. But I do like O'Neill. I think most neutrals do. I mean, I would describe him as a firefighter. Considering what he did at Bournemouth, like you say, they looked, I suppose, in a perilous position after that 9-0 defeat to Liverpool, and then he came in, really steadied them, and got them comfortably safe in the end. And then what I was actually going to mention is the reason they didn't stick with him. Possibly they just thought he's a one-season solution, and maybe to kick on, they needed someone else. And maybe, Wolves are maybe seeing the consequence of that now, because the job he did at Wolves last year as well, enormous credit, because I tipped them to go down at the start of last year because was it Lopetegui left like a week before the season started, and it was looking really chaotic, wasn't it? And he came in, and then incredible. They were nowhere really near the relegation battle. But has he got the tools to fight off relegation this season and stay away from it? Possibly not. Like we
Can
say.
I add one more point, Matt? After that run, I've got the fixtures up now. From the start of November, Palace, Southampton, Fulham, Bournemouth, Everton, West Ham, Ipswich, Leicester. So 8 games without, one where you'd say, oh, well, definitely gonna lose that to one of the big boys. So I suppose if you are the owners, you're almost looking at that as the period to judge him, rather than what we got: Liverpool, Brentford, Man City, Brighton. So I mean, he'll be furious if he does get taken out before that run. But then again, can I flip that as well, Matt? Sometimes owners do that, don't they? They make a change before an easy run to give the manager a start, and the outgoing manager says, well, hang on a minute, I could have done with having those games.
Yeah, I think we saw something similar with Palace a couple of years ago when they got rid of Vieira after a difficult run, and then Hodgson had like a nice, favourable run. And I mean, like we said, if people believe in a new manager bounce, you want to bounce into those 6 pointers, I guess. Look, there'll be Wolves fans that do highlight how difficult the games have been, but I also think it is worth highlighting that this bad form can be attached to the end of last season, where it was 1 win in the final 11. And they're conceding lots of goals, late goals quite a lot of the time, even going back to last season. There's certain games last season you could pick at, like in the cup games, lost to Ipswich Town from the Championship 3-2, lost to Coventry from the Championship 3-2, conceded like a 98th minute goal against Manchester United last season. Defensively, I think they need to be more solid. I agree. I look at these games, Liverpool, Brentford, Man City. It's difficult to judge on those games, but do you want to be going into a game against Everton and Ipswich on this horrendous run when Ipswich might still have that positivity still? They've come up, that novelty of being in the Premier League. They might be feeling a bit more up for it. Everton, although they're always down there, they are the masters of getting out of this situation. So I'd be a bit nervous if I'm a Wolves fan. I certainly think they can still stay up, but right now they are bottom.
Great stuff, Matt. Get involved in the comments. We'll clip that one out for Matt's channel. So if you are a Wolves fan, get involved in the comments. And particularly, I want to know, because it's quite binary here. Are you on the, it's going to turn, fixtures have been difficult, points are going to come through November, December? Or are you on the side of, nah, this is worrying, and when we get to November, as Matt points out, not going to be in the position to take advantage of the good fixtures because the confidence will all be gone. So let us know your thoughts in the comments. As an Ipswich fan, I want as many teams in the relegation mix as possible. As a Wolves fan, they're going to want to get as far away from it as possible. So Wolves are this week's Matt's moment, and we are going to go to the Worldie of the Week. Speaking of novelty, Matt, we've done a poll this week for Worldie. So if you head over to the community tab over here on my channel, you will see that the Worldie of the Week, well, I'll give you the rundown, Matt. In fourth place was Cole Palmer, the left foot zinger in off the post. And he just doesn't try Cole Palmer, does it? So football's so easy for him, or appears to be. Darwin Núñez bent the one, I think it was another left footer, wasn't it? For Liverpool against Bournemouth. Brian Mbeumo channeling Zidane with his body shape in the Cup final. But the winner, Matt, by absolutely miles, 63%, was Riccardo Calafiori. And that gives us a chance. I know we tend to focus on the teams that have been in the Championship and that are down the bottom, but that game was absolutely brilliant, wasn't it? Man City and Arsenal up the top of the table. Just give me your quick takeaways from that. What did you learn, and do you feel any different about the two-horse race and the title picture?
I'm not sure how to feel after that game, to be honest, Ben. It's definitely more entertaining than what we got last season between the two, which was a 0-0 draw at the Etihad. But it felt like Arsenal were like, we can win this time. Whereas last season, it was like, we'll come for the draw. This time they came for the win, and they defended so well with 10 men. A bonkers game. I mean, let's talk about the goal as well from Calafiori. What a finish in such a...
Where did that come from?
I don't know. You know, what, a 22-year-old defender bending it with his left foot across the keeper into the top corner. Unbelievable goal. And it came with a special Gary Neville, as it went into that top corner.
There's nowhere else with that technique, with your left foot and your body facing, nowhere else you can put that and score against a class keeper as well.
Yeah, so difficult as well, because like you say, at the near post, the keeper's going to save that. Maybe low, he might save that. You've got to get it just right. And remember, it's curling away from the goal. He's literally just got it in that corner. Unbelievable strike. And they're playing with confidence, Arsenal. You know, what a great first half from them going forwards. They were causing trouble. How dangerous they looked from set pieces. I mean, Gabriel was coming up and it just looked like he was going to win every header. And then obviously the red card does change the game, but in a sense, it suited Arsenal to just sit. And they were just so unlucky that the last kick of the ball was essentially Manchester City's equaliser. I remember speaking to Sophie as the game was going on, and I said to her during the second half, if Arsenal see this out, this is a massive statement. They didn't, but they still didn't lose, and they were playing with 10 men. So I don't know what to take away from it. Still too early. Everything hangs in the balance.
Yeah, it's so difficult, isn't it? Because if you told me it was a 2-2 draw and I didn't know the context, I would say, right, moral victory to Arsenal on that one. But then when you know the context, that they came so close to, like you say, what would have been an incredible victory, then I don't know whether that takes the bloom off the rose a little bit. But yeah, brilliant stuff. And for once in one of these big games, you got chaos and you got goals and you got drama. So I'm sure the TV ratings were through the roof for that one. Let's move on to We Need to Talk About. Fairly plainly, Matt, this week we need to talk about how much the bottom of the table sucks, and the fact we've got this. You said to me before we started recording, this record now, is it 6 teams without a win in the first 5 games in the Premier League is a record. I dare say you tempted fate last week. We said, you know what's going to happen with these head-to-heads we had between Leicester and Everton and Southampton and Ipswich. They're all going to end up draws. Bad teams don't win games. Teams down the bottom of the table don't win games. And the points have not gone on the table. Let me lead with Leicester Everton, because I've had my say on Southampton Ipswich on the Blue Monday podcast. People know what I think, so you can have your say on that. But Everton, again, giving up a lead, but it had been a losing streak, so they get the first point. Leicester are kind of in games, but not being convincing, and I'm not hearing good noises from their fans. It's like they've come back and picked up the PTSD from being at the bottom of the Premier League before. And like you said about Ipswich, the new car smell, that's still there. But you talk to Leicester and Southampton fans, they're like, oh, God, we're not going to win for another 8 weeks now or what have you. So, I think I'm more concerned from a Leicester point of view than an Everton point of view. I think we're going to talk about Everton a bit more later in the show. But what was your take on unhelpful 1-1 draw number 1? Leicester 1, Everton 1.
Yeah, it's difficult this because it's all still so tight, and we're not getting a proper reading on where teams might be, because maybe one could be an outlier. That might be Palace, and they might push out. It might be that one of the newly promoted teams suddenly goes and get a surprise win, or maybe even back-to-back wins between now and Christmas. So it's still hard to say. I mean, we said after last week, when we see the next results, context will be
We'll know more.
key. But we don't know anything. I mean, as a neutral, I know you're an Ipswich fan, Ben, but as a neutral, I must say I love it. I love it so close and cagey. I know you're probably like biting your nails every time Southampton.
Matt, I'd rather there was 6 teams close together than, you get the horrible scenario that everyone kind of thinks might happen of, there's Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton, and a big gap starts to build.
Yeah, and another thing I could say, probably speaking on behalf of all neutrals when it comes to the Premier League, is after last season, we don't want the same 3 that have come up to go back down. We want to see a competitive fight for survival, and I think we could get that. We've seen draws between Leicester and Everton and Leicester and Palace. So just in those 90 minutes, Leicester have matched those teams. It's difficult, isn't it? Because Leicester were leading at Palace, so we said, do they need to beat Everton to make up for the dropped points? But They were trailing this game against Everton, so they've rescued a point in a sense. I mean, it feels to me that under Steve Cooper, Leicester are going to churn out nearly a point per game, maybe just under it. They might get to about 34, 35 points, and they're going to be so close. So once again, it kind of kicks the can down the road. We're still waiting on a big victory, like a statement result where one beats the other, and you feel like that might really change things. But everything's just so finely balanced. So, looking at the 2 games, Southampton, Ipswich, and Everton, Leicester, Everton, sorry. I feel like the 2 bigger losers are Southampton and Everton, because they were leading and they were the 2 teams that were pointless before this. So they still sit behind the others. I mean, Everton were away from home, so you can maybe make an argument it was a more difficult game in a sense. But I think Southampton were really kicking themselves with the late goal they conceded. And they played quite well as well, Southampton. I did predict Ipswich to win, so I'm pleasantly surprised by Southampton's positive performance. And they've got a big game on the South Coast next week that we'll come on to later. It's just so finely balanced, Ben. You can't really pick anything. But like you said, as an Ipswich fan or a Leicester fan or a Southampton fan, if Palace, Everton and Wolves don't win anytime soon, it keeps them all together.
Totally agree. I've got 2 things to say, and I'll get your take on both of them. One is, we answered the question on Blue Monday of a draw. We say unhelpful draw, but when nobody's winning, draws obviously become more helpful. And you start to look at the defeat column, and you've got Leicester, Palace and Ipswich with 2 defeats, and Saints, Everton and Wolves with 4 defeats. So that says something. And I agree with you. At 94 minutes before, I mean, look, there's a load of context around Ipswich, Southampton, but in isolation, it's the 95th minute. You clear a corner and a deflected shot flies in the top corner. So in isolation, it's a hard one for Southampton to take. And I think, do you agree with me? You go from Ipswich would have been the big losers there.
Yeah.
Southampton, out of the 4 teams we're talking about here, if you include Leicester and Everton, Southampton then become the big losers because of what they've lost in that last minute. It was going to be the first win. They were going to jump up to 3 points and compete on Ipswich in the head-to-head. And now you kind of look at it, and if you're an Ipswich fan, which I am, you say, got out of Dodge with a point with the home game to come. If you can pour away at your rivals and then have the home game in the second half of the season, it's looking nice. So a lot turned on that deflected Morsey goal, didn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing. If you were following the games live, then you know who the big winners and losers are with the late goals. Because if you look at just the results after the games have all finished, you'll be like, okay, 1-1, everyone's where they are. But I've seen footage of the Ipswich fans coming out of St Mary's bouncing around as if they've won the game. And it could be a massive point, because it's not just a point game, but it's 2 points denied against Southampton, who are also going to be down there. Real deflating one for Southampton, especially with what I would say is they've had reasonably okay fixtures so far. I'd have thought they'd maybe picked up some more results because they've had Forest and Ipswich at home. They were playing 10-men Newcastle as well. Missed a penalty against Manchester United. There's quite a few things that are all building up now and just sort of like getting really frustrated. So they need to bounce back soon. Otherwise, it starts turning negative and maybe pressure on Russell Martin. I know there has been already, but I don't want to see him go. I'd like to see his football work and Southampton have a fighting chance. But yeah, going back to Ipswich, don't mean to say negative. Don't mean to sound negative. Sorry, but if you could just stay within touching distance the whole way through the season, that's fine. I know it could be a low bar this
above
season.
above the line at the moment, and it's a 2-point gap as well. So this is the thing we're struggling with, Matt, as Ipswich fans. Haven't won a game, but if you stop the clocks now, massive success, because you're above the line.
Yeah. That's literally it. And you have to deal with the conditions you're put in. A couple of years ago, there might have been a high tide where you needed 37 to stay up. It could be 32 or something. It could be
25.
It could be something really low. So if you just you want to kind of at least be in the middle of the box. Like I say, at the moment, we've got 6. It might be that one moves out. It could be that one falls in. I mean, it's certainly worth saying at the moment that teams before the season started that you might have thought could be close, Brentford and Forest, have had good starts. Bournemouth not really involved once again. So at the moment, we're looking at this 6, and I'm really excited to talk about the upcoming fixtures for this weekend. But yeah, if you're an Ipswich fan, considering as well that Southampton and Leicester have got that more Premier League experience, I think Ipswich holding their own. And I think as well, looking at the way the fans are talking here, I think the experience that Leicester and Southampton have had, like the not so nice experience in the Premier League, when they lose a game, it's like, oh, this again. Whereas Ipswich, because it's been so long and it's so much positivity and a novelty at the moment, even when they lose or draw, they're keeping their heads up high and feel like there's some positivity going into the next game, if that makes sense.
Well, and the defeats have been against Liverpool and Man City, where you go, fine, whatever, far better teams than Ipswich are going to lose to those two this season. I'll just close this out by, you said in the other segment, back-to-back wins. And with the way this is going, any team at any point in the entire season that wins back-to-back games and sticks 6 points on, if you're talking about 30 points being a big deal, that's 20% of 30 points in 2 games, isn't it? So if anyone can do that, the only issue for me is, in terms of the promoted teams, is you would make Palace, Everton and Wolves far more capable of knocking out that quick bang, bang 6 points than the promoted team. So we're still here, Matt. Hopefully we're not going to be telling this tale for week after week after week of no wins, but at the moment we are. It's a record-breakingly bad start for 6 teams down at the bottom of the Premier League. Let's look ahead, Matt, to the upcoming round. Right, so coming up, it will be round 6, won't it? And it is Newcastle, Man City, Arsenal, Leicester. Speaking of the promoted teams, ouch. Brentford, Chelsea, Brighton, Everton, Palace, Forest, Fulham, Wolves, Liverpool, Ipswich, Villa. It's not going to be a fun week at the bottom next week, is it? And United, Spurs. What, in terms of a mouth-watering matchup, is getting your attention there out of that little lot? And I did wince at Arsenal, Leicester, and Wolves, Liverpool, and Ipswich, Aston Villa, particularly. That's the top 3, isn't it, at the moment?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it is.
Difficult. I mean, at the top end of the table, I think Newcastle, Man City will be a decent match, with Man City showing signs that they're not quite at their best.
How long is Rodri hurt for? Is he out for a long time?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I've heard possibly a few months.
Let us know in the comments if you know.
Yeah, it could be a few months, which could, really be a disaster for Man City. But I want to carry on with the relegation sandwich discussion because we've got a 6-pointer.
My favourite type of sandwich.
We've got Everton versus Palace, and it's such an intriguing game, not just to Everton and Palace fans, but I think you've got to admit, as an Ipswich fan, you'll be keeping an eye on this, thinking maybe a draw's not
another
bad.
1-1. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I think it'd be typical, wouldn't it? You consider Villa Liverpool and Arsenal for some of the other teams that are down there, it might be that none of them get their first win. But if Everton and Palace also draw, we could go into weeks. We've gone past week 6 with 6 teams still winless. You just feel with the law of averages that we're bound to get a win soon for one of these 6. And I am looking at that Everton Palace game, but I'm not sure. I mean, we do need to speak about Everton with the big news recently. We won't go into massive amounts of detail because we're not 100% clued up on what's gone through yet. But it says that the Friedkin Group have agreed to buy Everton. We'll try and find out more through the week. But if that can give them a lift at Goodison as well, with this game being at home, that could be really influential. Palace, I mean, we haven't spoke about them much. A 0-0 against Man United is not a bad result, considering Manchester United have been decent recently. I think that's really poised to be a good game at Goodison.
Yeah, I mean, I would have had, on the basis of the end of last season, where Palace were really brilliant, weren't they? You would have thought, oh, this doesn't smell good for Everton. You know, they've been bad at home. They've been bad everywhere, haven't they? And that confidence, though, Matt, where they're taking the lead and they just can't win a game at the moment. And Palace have traditionally been the sort of side that if you're not at it and you're fragile, they won't be, and they will beat you. But it's just not been the case for Palace at the start of this season. I do agree with you that the takeover thing, when it's completed, will give them the lift. I just wonder whether Everton fans are going to be a little bit like, oh, I'll believe it when I see it. We've heard this before, due diligence, you know, oh, they're set to buy it, you know, money agreed, contracts exchanged, no takeover happened. So I wonder whether it might actually need to see someone in a suit coming out on the pitch waving, saying, I've bought your football club, it's done, you can be happy now, rather than the links. So yeah, I mean, playing out all 3 scenarios, and I can see all 3 scenarios, you do gravitate to the unhelpful draw, don't you? You can see a gnarly Palace win and the Everton fans thinking, when's this ever going to end? And you can also see, right, Everton finally get the win and get going. So I agree with you. Really, really nicely poised, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's not uncommon to find a team you wouldn't expect to be down there after just 5 games. Who I'm referring to there is Palace, because I think, speaking for myself, for sure, I think I predicted them to be right in mid-table this season. You consider how good things were when Glasner came in towards the end of last season, beat Villa 5-0 and beat Man United 4-0. And you're thinking, oh, they could be really good this season. I know they lost Elise. Still got Eze, you got Mateta, got quite a few decent players there. So I have been surprised.
We thought was going to go, didn't we, all summer? Yes. And he stayed as well, yeah,
exactly. There's more than enough quality to still get them eventually to mid-table. But yeah, I mean, we said this, you know, a week or 2 ago. If you're not going to beat the fellow mid-table teams, it puts pressure when you play the bottom teams. Because if Everton now beat Palace, then the pressure ramps up at Palace, even though it is still early days. Yeah, really difficult one to call. I mean, we'll save that for our Premier League predictions that we'll do later in the week. And then we'll also maybe mention Bournemouth Southampton briefly, because not that I think Bournemouth are going to be in too much trouble, but a bit of a South Coast derby. I know it's usually Southampton Pompey is the big one down there, but Bournemouth on the back of a 3-0 defeat to Liverpool. I know it's Liverpool, but I didn't think Bournemouth were at their best there. You know, I thought they would actually make it a bit more competitive. And maybe with Southampton's recent performances, they could go and give them some trouble. I'm intrigued to see what happens.
Should be a good football match as well with those 2 managers as well, shouldn't it? It should be pretty entertaining, I reckon.
I think so. Yeah, I think it'd be a good game. Hopefully Southampton are in it. I know I'm not a Southampton fan, but I want to see this competitiveness down the bottom. Yeah, I'll be intrigued to see what how that one plays out. I think that's the 4:30 on a Sunday. So Sky.
I think it might be. I think it might be Monday night even. Might even be the Monday night football.
Monday? Sorry.
Yeah, so I think all eyes as well on that one. Guys, thank you so much for joining us on the latest episode of the Premier League Check-In podcast, Matt. You can check out myself and Matt over on his channel doing the League One predictions as well. And there's clips and whatnot. So please do hit subscribe and like on everything you see of ours. Them's the rules. And we will see you next week for some more Premier League chat.